All righty. That wasn't quite a smooth theater fade, but we tried. Welcome to this afternoon's conversation, Brides of the Deity, Queer Possessions with Cultural Uprisings. My name is Harold Stewart. My pronouns are they and he, and I am so excited that you are here. I'm also excited to have with me, right next to me, up in DC, Jonathan McCory,
Hello.
cultural doula at the National Black Theater in Harlem. Dev Blair, local Boston artist,
Hi, hi.
trap, theater artist, trap rapper, fire starter, um, and last but certainly not least, the new interim director of programs. She has returned home to the theater offensive, Ma Tanasia Jones.
Hey, everybody.
So, if you haven't already felt the spirit of just joy and celebration, um, you will soon feel more of it. As today, this event is happening on Juneteenth, and such a fitting occasion for myself, being from Texas. Juneteenth for me and my community was always a time of celebration. So we are happy to be able to bring this conversation on this kind of special occasion, and also to say, like, you know, Black folks all over the world are going in today. Like, Black joy is on a fleek that I have like never seen in my life. So we're just getting in where we fit in to join the kind of joy and celebration. Juneteenth for me as a Texas native is very, very important. Also because it kind of recognizes this thing called Black liberation, and every kind of inch and action that we have done and win that we have got towards our liberation. So it is important, especially for folks like me, to know that Abraham Lincoln is very problematic for us. He's more problematic than liberator. So we take this time to celebrate the news that came towards Galveston, Texas, that we have won, right? That we have been active participants in our liberation and we were winning. So that's what we want to acknowledge today. The name of this event, Brides of the Deity, Black Queer Possessions with Cultural Uprisings, also acknowledges that many of our people come from West Africa. And so thinking about the ways in which we feel called to movements, we honor kind of spiritual practice in our movement, and we kind of honor ancestors. So want to deal with a little of that as we talk. And also this event it's Pride Month as well. And so it's important for us to understand that Black queer people have always been connected to movement building, especially cultural uprisings. We can go as far back as Harriet Tubman. We can include people like Marsha P. We can include people like Patricia and Alicia from the Movement for Black Lives. And we can include these beautiful faces that are here today. I think those folks have wonderful profiles that you should read and get to know and kind of celebrate and support their work. And also this is an introduction to other folks that you should know and read. Question of mine when I think about, you know, what calls us to movements and cultural uprisings and looking at this present moment of like COVID-19 and thinking about health risks that we know as queer Black folks we may have just because we're engaged with a system that also doesn't value and take care of us health-wise, but yet and still we continue to kind of show up and show up and show up. And so I'm just interested in like, why do we show up? Why do we put our life on the line when the movement is for us specifically? And sometimes we may not be the focus of a movement and a cultural uprising. So hopefully we can get at that during this conversation. But because it is Juneteenth and because we are acknowledged in the West Africa in us, we dare not begin without acknowledging ancestors. So I want to know from all my folks that are panelists, who are you bringing with? Like invoke an ancestor, and I'll start. So I am bringing to this conversation today none other than my mother, Betty Jean Stewart. because at home, Juneteenth was a high holiday for my mother. And she would make sure, I'm the seventh of eight, so she would make sure that we had like the official Juneteenth shirt, right? So with the screen print that was the print of the year, the color of the year, and the history on the back of it. My mother would also barbecue on that day, right? And when she had rolled the joint, when the blues music was going, you knew that she was celebrating her freedom. So that's the way that she did it on Juneteenth. So I just want to bring in the Queen Supreme, Betty Jean, to this conversation. Tanasia, invoke an ancestor.
Hey, I'm going to invoke my grandmother, Betsy Brown. I'm invoking her today because she was always herself, no matter what circumstances. Close up to fourth grade, Grandparents' Day, she came in a full leather cat suit. I had to help her upstairs in between classes. And that is who I'm invoking right now, her spirit and all of that, unafraid to be her Black woman self. So that's what I'm invoking into this space.
Oh, welcome, Granny. Dev Blair.
My mute was fighting with me for a second there. I'm also going to be calling my grandmother, Melva Faye Woods, who was, I think, just thinking about Uprising and thinking about what's happening right now and how, these movements are always happening. Like, she was there back in this, back in the 60s, back during civil rights, is married to a former formerly married to a former Black Panther. Like,
come on, double.
She, she's not playing around. She never has. And we've been talking a lot recently about everything that's been going on. And you take what your elders have to say you ruminate on it, And I've been ruminating a lot on the things that my grandma has to say. She's brought up how, she feels hopeless sometimes with how we're still fighting. And she's like, well, I fought so that, your mom didn't have to fight. Now you're fighting. And I'm like, yeah, but, there's a reason why we have to do this.
Yeah.
And kind of being able to reflect on that with someone who was there before me, always, always very clarifying, always offers a lot.
All right, come on, elder grandmother. Dr. Hayes McCory.
So I will say, and the people that I'm going to evoke are actually my grandfathers, Basil King and also Floyd McCory Sr. These are two veterans who both fought in the war, fought for this country. They both have transitioned. However, they both, I don't know. They just for right now, they're the folks that want to cover me and want to be with me and want to support me. So since I feel their vibration, I'm gonna name their vibration. So that's what it is.
Welcome, Grandpa and Papa. We welcome all of those people here into this conversation. So let's get to know y'all, like for real, right? And anyone can take this question in any order, right? I'm queer, so I don't like a 1, 2, 3. I like a 3, 5, 2, and a 1. That order. Let's talk about your current work. So can you bring us into the knowledge of your current work related to movement or any work that you think is relevant for us to know in this moment? Who wants to start?
I can. Oh, no, go. Take it.
I was going to say, the timing of this is ridiculous because I'm coming just off of helping organize the Boston Black Trans Pride March, which happened earlier today. And my being here is an indication of the fact that the event went well, which is really, it was really heartening, very heartening to be a part of that experience and hold space for other people to share in that experience. And that's kind of, I would say, what is most indicative of my work right now is that I almost don't even feel like I know I'm an artist, and I know that there is art coming about what's going on right now. But I feel very, very in tune with my community organizer self right now. In general, I'm a poet, playwright. I am the one and only Trap Beat Tranny. And you can hear all of my stuff on Bandcamp, okay, as well as Spotify and really anywhere you want to listen to it. There's more stuff in the works, always more stuff in the works. Some poetry projects, some music projects, y'all gonna see. But I'm most excited. I recently was named a recipient of the Boston Foundation's lab grant,
Yeah.
which will be used to support a virtual production of a play that I've been working on for far too long, that I refer to as A Game of Life, a modern ritual drama, which is all about kind of both destroying theater by like dirtying it with something that the theater people don't like, video games, but also taking it back to what it really is, like its actual roots in being ritual drama. What does that actually mean? And what does that mean now with, you know, the conversations that we have about bodies on stage? So that's kind of where I've been, like headspace, artistically, and just moving through the world.
All right. So I've been working. Harold introduced me as a creative doula, because I think of myself as being the intermediary between creative imagination and manifestation coming to fruition, and really helping to steward that in between space, that unknowing space with artists, but just with idea, right? Being the vessel of allowing or being the conduit to allow to connect the bridge, to make the bridge actually materialize, so that we can actually have the idea mean something on this planet versus it being something that is vapid or doesn't actually appear. So at MBT, I really help to steward artists, really helping to make spaces for artists. And I think for my community at large, what I've been doing in the space of activism, also in the space of, is really trying to make sure that Black spaces are alive, thriving, and are present. I think that there are many ways in which to skin the cat and to make this thing actually pivot and make this actually, as I was saying in another conversation, pivot the Titanic that is America. And I think part of that is making sure that spaces are physical places, not just a space inside of a place, but actually a whole place is ground codified and named for Black bodies. And that space is well resourced, but also is indigenously inherent to who we are, not to who we were conditioned to be. So those are just some of the things that I work towards, what I do, and what my work is consisted of.
Thank you.
You want me to go, Harold?
Yes, T.
So hi, everybody. I'm T. I am a disruptor, I will say, and I'm a disruptor out of necessity, not because I was trained or groomed to be in it, right? I lived in a lot of white institutions in my youth, and those white institutions made me question a lot about how things were run, how things were done out of the status quo and out of habit. In my questioning, I've realized that I'm really good at it. I like to take uncomfortable risks. I like to make people uncomfortable and take risks so we can question those systems, right? If someone says that's how something's supposed to be, I'm the one that people hire to be like, but why? Like, why? And then let's look at it and make sure it's the way that it's supposed to be, right? And because of that, I have had the graciousness of working at a lot of nonprofit arts organizations in Boston, from Huntington to Brown Box Theater, to the Theater Offensive to Stage Source. So my disruptiveness is what makes me valuable to this community. In activism, I will say I am still a disruptor. If something is published out there, I'll be the first to be one to be like, but is that really all you can do? So that is me at a heart.
So you've heard it here on the Globe platform, so you know who's really going to be running the Theater Offensive, because like, is that really what we're doing, Harold? I get those messages now, and but okay, T. And I think, Dev, you brought us into your like current work in the movement in Boston and the cultural uprising. And I would just ask the same question for T and Jonathan. How do you feel like the work that you're doing is connected to current movement for Black lives, Black survival through COVID-19, or any of that?
I would say, and I want to go back to a little bit of a beginning question that you asked, like the prompt of the inquiry of how you wanted us all to come together and what you were hoping that we would get towards, of why queer Black folk are finding themselves at the front line of almost every movement. I think because we are searching for our humanity to be fully seen, and in searching for our humanity to be fully seen, we're not looking for a box to be checked, but for our whole bodies to be given liberty. And our whole body can only be found liberty if we actually check, question, and interrogate all the notions of supremacy that actually make us feel other. And so therefore it becomes our birthright to actually lead human evolution. It becomes our birthright to question, interrogate, and disrupt, as you said, the very nature of what this system looks like. And so there's a weight that is actually on our shoulders that no one actually can name. No one, it's an itch that we have that just says, this doesn't feel good. And something that you said to me, Harold, that really radically shifted my own sense of becoming is that we're inviting people in, right? We're not actually coming out. We're inviting people into understanding how powerful they are and how they can actually make choice be a part of their livelihood. So to that point, how am I helping my community?
Bring it back.
I mean, because he already took it. I was like, I had that question on here already. Like, but I'm glad that you are like,
You said
it's queer. It's back and forth. It's a give and take. Venus and Serena 101. All righty.
Jonathan.
So what I will say in my current work is about really helping in the very simplest form, is reminding us how powerful and how beautiful breath is, right? Just consistently reminding us the privilege that it is to breathe. Whenever I bring people together, especially Black bodies together, I remind us consistently that the choice that we have to breathe, the choice that we have to make another step is a privilege that is honored by our ancestors. I'm wearing a shirt saying powered by my ancestors. That breath is powered by ancestral force that we get the honor to help to complete. We get to complete their unfinished work, and every step that we take in that breath is an affirmation of it. So I will say that I am doing that in tangible ways. That was very probably esoteric. I'm doing that in tangible ways in the programming that we do at MBT. Again, I said this a little before, in the advocacy, and in New York City, there's a coalition of theaters of color that helps to really fortify 52 theaters of color in New York City and making sure that they get city funding because we really only get 1% of the total pie that goes out to the cultural groups. And so really, really working with Sade Lithcott, who's the CEO of MBT, to really advocate for that cultural body, advocate for National Black Theater, and making sure that our founder, Dr. Barbara Ann Tier, the vision that she set 52 years ago is anchored, is fortified, and is able to make sure that there's a birthright for future generations.
Beautiful, beautiful. Tanasia.
I would say my work really centers around the longevity of us, right? It centers around me making, like, especially in program director, it centers around me making programs that are not only going to outlive myself, but are going to, in this moment, bring light to all of our issues, to everything that we fight for right now. And it's not about the quick solution, right? That's my goal. My goal is not about a pop-up event here and then it's gone forever, right? Let's celebrate Black trans lives now and then not anymore. And I just talked to Dev about this last week. It's about creating a long-term plan so we can celebrate trans Black lives always. You know,
speak on it.
We've been doing it in our little circles, like from time to time, right? But now it's time to unchain that circle and bring it to the world, right? So how do we continue through our programming at TTO, right, to have a celebration of our lives, as well as teach the people who need to be taught something. You know what I mean? So that's all I got to say on that topic.
And what's actually really beautiful about what you're bringing up is that the discomfort, the vibration of discomfort, like we're conditioned to find comfort. We're conditioned to find comfort very quickly, find a space of comfort. And the real space of actual solution building is sitting with the discomfort so you have empathy. If you don't have the space of empathy, how can you ever have the conversation of moving the pendulum forward? And I think that's what's really radical about this time that we're now in, is that people are sitting with the discomfort of a solution that will not come. There's an action that's coming fast enough.
Well, I mean, and the solution also, like, let's go back to Octavia Butler and Afrofuturism, right? The solution is not easy. We can't see it, right? We cannot see it. And so that scares people, especially, you know, some of our white co-conspirators, right? The fact that they cannot see a state without the police being defunded, right? That is the problem. Which is why we have They Can't Wait, all other stuff, right? So I think it's just like, let's go back to our roots and imagining. We are artists all here, right? We can imagine things, worlds beyond our beliefs. So why can't we imagine this world right now?
And I would also add, and the solution and the way we show up is deeply spiritual, it's soul work, right? And that's what a lot of people may not be able to kind of understand, like the rhythm of the movement. And, you know, when we are mounted, right? So when we are possessed, that gets to a couple of questions that I have. And so, Nasia, before I go there, there's a real tangible thing that I would love for you to name, and I can continue to try to feed you. I'm gonna give you some food.
Harold, I'm just gonna say some food.
Right. I think of you as the modern day Harriet Tubman up in Boston, literally taking folks to freedom. Do you know what I am referring to, Nasia? It happens late in the midnight hour. You want to talk about that?
Oh my goodness. Wait. Which one that happens late in the midnight hour? I don't know.
It involves your automobile.
Oh. I don't know what you're talking about. Name it specifically, Harold.
So, Tanisha Jones. Oh my God. Tanisha Jones uses her time late at night in automobile to literally drive people from the movement away from Deity.
Yeah.
Like, so when the rioting starts, the looting starts, so people just need to get away because there's increased violence. Like, Tanisha is there with the car, like, hey, where you need to go, I got you, and let me go get some more. So that's why I call you, like, modern day Harriet. 19 times she went back to Franklin Park to get, like, 10,000 others, right? It's important.
You're right. And the funny thing is, and this is what I need to get better at, is naming the things that I do that the world does not see as habit, right? That is just what I see as habit, right?
Yeah.
Dev reached out to me and started that first, right? Dev reached out to me and was like, do you have a car? And I was like, I do have a car. What you need, boo, right? And it is this thing of building family that we all have right here. Like, Jonathan, I don't really know you. I haven't met you in person, but you are family because the way that Harold talks to you, and you are family, right? And if you needed anything, I'd be there in a hot second. But literally, it's that, right? It's how do we build our community no matter what, and reach out to those people in our Black circles who need our help, right? Because that's the only way how we lift each other up. Sometimes in the art world, I feel like we need to do flocking lessons again. You know what I mean? Realizing how to follow and how to, like, get back in line and follow new people from time to time.
I mean, you know, I know a new director of programs who, if we want to flock at TTO, we can send with flocking with the theater offensive. All right, so let's get, thank you, Tanisha, because I really do think that's, like, important work, right? And again, it's that invisible labor that is life-saving. And I think as Black, queer, and trans folks, you know, we're not always looking for the spotlight. You know what I'm saying? When Marsha P. Jones or whoever that was Black or a person of color threw that brick and held the door open, you know, it wasn't like, oh, take a picture of me and put me on the front lines. Yeah. We are reactionary and responsive to what needs to get done. And we put our life there and we use our resources, not even thinking about how it will benefit us. But again, that nurturing, healing quality that makes us queer and cultural kind of shows up. So I just want to kind of name it, friend. You doing the thing. All right, so the soul work, right? The spiritual aspects, like how is spirituality, religion, ritual, ceremony, like connected to the movement work specifically? Or if you can talk about the movement and the artistic work, because I think Deb was bringing that in when he was talking about kind of what theater was, right?
I mean, I will say for me, the movement is a manifestation. I said this when I was earlier today when I was saying some words at the Black Trans March. I was like, we are here to do the thing that the world has never done. I'm like, we have to be able to envision the new world and believe it so honestly and boldly in our hearts and minds that it becomes true. Like, that is the only option, because if it lives there that truthfully, it has to be born eventually. I said it was like it's like a Black Athena, goddess birthed from the brain, you know? Like, I really feel like part of the work is trying to envision, and not necessarily succeeding, but understanding that that's part of it. You know, and I think that that's something that is, yes, very scary for a lot of people, us included. But speaking to why it ends up always being like so often it is us at the forefronts of these movements, you know, I also think that, like, there's a lot of scary things for queer and trans Black people, period. Not to say that, like, you know, that potentially hyper vigilant ability to deal with fear is always a positive necessarily, or even to suggest that it's always hypervigilant. But I think that breeds an ability to navigate, like, just because of survival. Like, to have survived this long, we've had to do that. We have had to just be able to get through the scariness, work through the scariness, and manifest something better. You know, that is how I have lived through, Lord knows.
There was a just to uplift that narrative and idea of just also this understanding that there in native tradition we're considered the generation of awakening, and there was also this very known notion of like there will be spiritual casualties inside of not physical but spiritual casualties inside this generational gap that happened. And if we think about what happened before COVID-19, before the movement for Black Lives really lit up, people were dying spiritually because of the mental and psychic roadblocks that were happening because of digital technology. People were dying spiritually because of their infatuation with capitalism. People were dying spiritually because of their narcissism, right? The narcissistic nature or the expedient nature of X, Y, and Z. And then there were also people who were grounding themselves in spirit because they were getting ready for a revolutionary fervor that they didn't know when was going to happen, but it was about to happen. And I think that what we're having happen right now is the vortex and the merger of those two those moments happening where the people who have grounded themselves ready in a known space of spirit. And I don't mean religion. I don't mean in a dogma. I don't mean a practice. I mean you're understanding that you are connected to a greater source, right? And that greater source can be X, Y, and Z, whatever you might believe in. You could just be like, I have inside of me runs the energy that turns on the sun. So therefore, anything that runs around me, anything that orbits around me is my universe, right? That's a spiritual practice. That's you understanding that you have a gravitational pull by the words that utter out of your mouth. So I think that there's a reclamation happening inside of this generation, unlike other generations, where we're starting to understand because we learned, right? There is an element of us learning and actually studying that the patriarchal nature of movement building, it does not actually create systemic change. That you have to actually question and queer the notion of leadership, the notion of how you flock, the notion, because why this movement has lasted so long, the movement for Black Lives, ever since George Floyd has lasted so long, because there is no centralization of leadership. There's a decentralization of it that's allowing for the ones who have the strength in the moment to rise up and claim their space while allowing for this kind of flocking nature to happen that is sweeping the world. And that is an awakening. Now the question is, how do you awaken? And what happens after you awaken? What love do you want to build this life with? And that's when I say, sit with your discomfort.
Yes.
The moment that you want to create the solution, I say sit with your discomfort before you create the solution. Because the moment that you create a solution based off your comfort, you have re-transcribed oppression inside of what you are building. And what I'm asking, and what I hope that we all are asking, is how can we not transcribe oppression inside of this new opportunity to not have time repeat itself again?
How do we not go back to those comforts? I completely and utterly hear you. And on the question of like spirituality and things that you were saying, Jonathan, right, is that I feel as though I can only speak for myself and my family. I feel as though I was born from a long line of women who are survivalists, right? They were going to survive by any means necessary. They were going to make sure that their offspring survived by any means necessary, right? Yeah. And because I came from a long line of women who were survivalists, right? There is a lot that then gets packed on, that then gets pushed down, right? To generation, right? And I am joyful. I am enjoying the fact that I get to wrestle with all of those things that my survivalist women in my life fought to get me to wrestle with right now, right? The fact that I can be on this panel and talk to y'all about this uncomfortable time is because of that. And so I think you're right. There, in this new generation, we are coming to terms with the fact that we have a deeper thing, that we have some spiritual connection that is going to guide us through this because of those survivors, right? Their strength has not left us, right? So as we wrestle, we need to remind ourselves of that. And one way that I am doing that through myself is I have an ancestral altar. I pray to Betsy Brown. I pray to my great grandmother, Sarah, Elizabeth Purnell every single day, right? I meditate, right? That's how I get through this practice of continued activism, continuing disruption, right? In a state of where we're uncomfortable all the time, we have to have things that cement us and earth us to the ground, into the past. And I find joy in finding each of my ways to do that, right? Because sometimes I'll do something and I'll be like, that's not it. But then I'll find something else and be like, that is it, right? So
because your smile is connected to your softness. That smile that's able to disrupt is connected to your softness. And when I think about what this moment can be, when I think about our predecessors, if we can hold on to our softness while still railing against the machine and still establishing and reconstructing new ways of beginning, we actually have won. What we have done, we have brought our humanity with us. Our humanity for what purpose?
Free, Jonathan, free.
Our forebears, I'm not trying to be funny here.
No, you're not being funny. I'm laughing because
forebears connected their humanity in order to make space for us in the future. And what we have the opportunity to do is connect, reconnect, reclaim, and actually center our joy, our softness, our demasculated selves, and actually allow for our full goddess self to manifest the world that we want. And we have the opportunity that has never been possible until now.
Yes.
I think about when some people say, so the they in my pronouns, they, them, refers to, I think, identify as genderqueer, but the they, them invites that ancestral spirit to kind of be there. And when we have pronouns in a particular order, folks say, do you prefer they over here? How do you do the order? And I say, the they for me can always be silent because it's a spiritual designation. It's about my mother, my father, my ancestors, grandmother, people I don't know, people who help me articulate things that I ain't never really read. I'm like, what?
Right. You're like, oh, they talking.
Where you get that from? And so I know they have come and visited me, and I just feel like now, again, we invoked the ancestors in the beginning, and they are here, right? So I often tell people, you'll know when they're present. You ain't got to worry about, are you they or are you he? You know when they're present, and I just feel them here. And I want to acknowledge that. Y'all know I identify as a saved, sex positive Southern sissy. So to kind of honor that, I'm just thinking about, Albertina Walker, something within me, right? That there's something within me that holdeth the reins. So we're going to invite people to put questions in the Q&A function. I have one more question, and then we'll go to those questions from the Q&A and some that were sent in before time. But now y'all done got me off. Might as well just open the doors right now and just say, continue to come on in, spirit. So for me, this moment is so beautiful because it advances the best of us, right? So if we think about the principles of the movement for Black lives, all Black lives, and it starts then with Black trans lives, and prison lives, when you see some of the iconography that come out that says Asada taught us, when you see some of the other language and things that are published, it really is clear that we heard you, we seen you, we walked with you before, and the best of us, the best of our religion, how we expand Blackness. So again, this is not a movement that's anti-Christian, but it says we'll take the best of Christianity, Black Christianity, and move it forward. Anti any kind of politics of respectability if they don't if we can take the best of how we represent and kind of move it forward. And it's expanded Blackness so much so that it's, you can't penetrate it. There's not a clear leader. You watch the protests and then they're like, the police thought they shut down one street and then here come another group of children dressed in black. Like, where y'all come from? On the radio. So continuing to expand Blackness so much so that it's like, we're all out of options. I'm sitting here wondering how much riot gear y'all got, because I know how many Black people there are in the world. world, and how many of them in America, and how many of them are coming, right? So we're going to have to negotiate something different because this is a expansive movement. Like, it's black, and black on every end, black coming up, black. It keeps reinventing blackness. So the question and all of that, because y'all didn't got me hyped.
I was about to ask, Carol.
Moderator, objective, fish, and now y'all done got me hyped. So what do you think we should advance? What are you advancing? Like, what is the goodness that like we want to take forward? Audre Lorde says this. She said, we do this work so another generation of lesbians of color don't have to reinvent themselves or their history all over again. So you can advance something, right? So what's the goodness that we're trying to say? Take that goodness and advance it.
I'm trying to create space, so I'm
That's me too.
Y'all go.
Y'all.
Well, I think, actually, I repeat the question.
So I could go a little.
Because like it flew away from me.
So I think that what I'm trying to advance in the world, what type of goodness am I trying to advance in the world to try to so that someone doesn't have to recreate what is that I'm literally trying to make sure that my intentionality, I'm intentional with my action. I'm intentional with how I operate, and that intentionality is about love, right? I'm really a vessel trying to awaken as much love on this planet as possible, because I have grown to understand love is the highest vibration that this world has ever known, and love can radically shift everything. There's a quote that Dr. Barbara Ann Tier said that where there is love, there is no fear. So if I can generate enough spaces of love, I can disseminate and actually dismantle the notions of fear, which is at the root, in my opinion, of oppressive nature, of oppressive ideology. So I try to do that in compassionate ways of like trying to make sure I see people. I try to do that in compassionate ways. And honestly, I try to answer every email I receive so that people feel like they're heard. I try to make sure I do that in compassionate ways. I'm just trying to make sure that I am the catalyst and the launching pad for the next generation of artists, right? Yeah. How do I seat a new generation of artists that can be seen, that allows for them to be a launching pad so that there can be more opportunities, more of us actually showcasing and sharing our narratives. And I also do that by having the knowledge and love and know-how to lean on to great friends, right? To make sure I have a family around me, right? Harold, you're a part of that family. Like, how do you create your tribe that allows for you to radiate out and actually radio out your mission, your vision, and also check yourself. Get humble.
Well, I think
that's necessary. That's very, very necessary.
And I think what she's speaking on is something that I try to uplift and take to future generations and all that stuff is Adrienne Marie Brown. If y'all haven't read her book, Emergent Strategies, Pleasure Activism, everybody read it, please, right now. I was listening to this panel. She has a theory about dandelions, right? And how they grow, right? And the thing that I didn't even know I did until I read this book is I intentionally try to spread my power, right? As a Black woman, I go into every room and I think about how can I disperse power to everybody in this room and make them feel like they have power. Because when everyone has a little bit of power, right? The accountability is not only from me to them, it's from them to me, right? Yeah. It goes all types of ways. And then it's from them to each other, right? So how do we continue to grow those roots out and to give all those other, like the young folks, like the trans, everybody that power, so we can all hold each other accountable. Because I'm the first one to say in any room that I am no expert, right? I know what I know until I don't, right? Yeah. So I need that accountability to sustain me, to keep me growing as the dandelion that I am. So that's what I try to do.
I think for me, a lot of this has to, like, of what I'm taking with me for future generations is very, very centered in, I just need people to believe Black trans folks when they say what they're saying. You know, I think that, and be understanding what we mean when we say community and who we are actually in community with, and who we are not. I think that those two things are kind of the big things. I think that, you know, the world kills Black trans people 1,000 ways before it actually kills us.
Yeah.
And I find that one of the bigger ways that it happens is we are often slandered and defamed. I mean, really, the basis of, like, if we want to get into it, like, the basis of misgendering is really just slander, because that's not the person. Who are you talking about? You know, that, I think, to me, has kind of been the biggest thing that I have started to see fall away and want to continue to see. Like, don't ever let that come back. Like, learn from this that has to go, because that is what allows, then, our physical deaths.
Bye, trans slander, Black trans slander. Bye-bye.
Don't want to see it.
Nevermore.
So let's just take a breath, I think, for this moment, for this segment, because, you know, we believe in breath, right? And again, Adrian invites us to breathe, and everyone else we've mentioned invite us to breathe. So a breath for this moment. Thank you. We'll go into some of the questions that have been submitted and continue to come in. This one, I think, you know, I may get emotional, you know, that's the soft side is there too. Because when I read this question, I almost heard it being said. And I think it's the connection out there with the person who submitted it. And it is such a profound, simple question and has a lot of weight. When did you know you were different? When did you know that you were different? And I just think just honoring that, like that, you know, this is a queer kind of panel, right? And I think to come into one's own as like non-normative and to just say like, I am different, right? And Jonathan used the word becoming, and I like to think about being and becoming every day and really owning the fact that like we're different, right? Part of that difference is culturally, is spiritual. And part of it, as Octavia Butler would say, for successful life, in that parable, you have to create more possibilities and more variations and mutations. So, does anyone know when they were different? If you have a moment to think about it, my brothers and sisters would tell you, I'm the seventh child born on the 7th day of September. My mother had her tube still tied when I came out. So I came in this mother like, hey, something is very different about me. And so let's make room and get ready. But I had to kind of grow into it. And I really want to just honor my parents today because they always created space for me to be. They never compared me to the other 6. I was drawing murals in their bathroom and, you know, they never brought attention to it. And I often say I grew up free and I just didn't know it, right? Because society had told me if I ever came out to them, they would disown me, like that they wouldn't like. But then I look at all my pictures, I was like, child flaming since September 7th, 1982. Like, you know, it was just like, it was just there, you know? So for me, it wasn't a matter of like knowing that I was different. You know, I just recently, about 2 or 3 years ago, because both of my parents are ancestors now, and all I can do is just reflect on the time I had with them. And I was like, they allowed me to grow up free. Like they created space for me. And every day I thank them for that, because there's a lot of things that I don't have to like figure out anymore, because I've been walking in this body, you know, for 37 years now.
There are two ways. There are two ways that I will acknowledge that I realized I was different. One way is a way in which that created harm. So a way in which that created trauma. And I'm really having these really interesting notions of taking the learnings instead of the trauma from situations. So how do I take the learning from the situation versus the trauma of the situation? But when I was young, I grew up very sexually kind of like, oh, what's going on? Like curious. I was a curious person. And I got really beat for that. I got shunned for that. So an element of me became completely, element of my humanity got completely shut off in that moment. And that was difference. That created a difference inside of me. That difference, I romanticized probably because I'm talking to my therapist about it, but I romanticized around it for the simple fact of like trying to cope with it and trying to say that it was a blessing, but that was a scar, right? That was a scar that I've been working through, and that created a different human than the human that you get to know now. The other thing that created when I knew I was different, and I mean knowing from a space of like, I was put on this planet to do something rare, was when I was baptized for the second time. I was baptized at First Corinthian Baptist Church by Reverend Lakeisha. It was not planned at all. I was in that church, and she said, there's someone over here that wants to get baptized. I'm gonna hold space for them to come up. And it was me. I came up, and when I went through this process of being baptized at First Corinthian Baptist Church, what came out of my body, what came out of my vessel, my voice, was a download. And that download really made me clear that I'm a vessel of witness, and that I can create radical change with my voice. There is a energy inside of me, some people might call it a Shango energy inside of me that wants to have a conversation with the world. And that energy that wants to have a conversation with the world, if I allow myself to become empty, it can then be filled by that source. And I get to be the lucky vessel to bear witness to the brilliance that can come through me. So I would say that was one definitive moment that radically made me aware that this body has a language inside of it, a connection to source inside of it, that allows for the magnitude of source to come through in precise ways. And it's through language.
Ashe.
I'll say that nonverbal communication was really nice, though. We did that through Zoom. I want to acknowledge. But I would say a moment for me when I knew, and it's funny because I was about to say, like, well, you know, I came out twice, so blah, blah, but like, I think for me it's when I chose not to be confirmed because I was raised Catholic and they didn't like me. No, and you know, I had a lot of reluctance when I was young to spirituality, like a lot of resistance as it was being presented to me, like via the church. I also wasn't going to a church where there were a lot of Black people there. And so I just kind of, there was this question always, and like I had been baptized and all that, so I like went to the catechism classes and all of that, and I was just kind of like, this is not doing it. Like I swear it's just not. I was like, it's something like, am I wrong? Like I'm like, and so for me, and it's such a small thing. Because I think it's another one of those moments of like when your parents give you space, give you freedom. Because my grandma was like, Dev's getting confirmed. And Dev didn't know that. My mom said, no. Consuela said, Dev's got to do what Dev wants to do here.
Yeah.
And did not push it overtly with me. For that very reason, to give me the time and space to like come to a decision, and the decision I came to was no, I'm good. I'm about to leave and go to college, and the whole world's about to change. Like, who knows what I'm about to learn about my spirituality? And I definitely learned a lot in college, but that was from that moment that change was able to happen.
Wow. I mean, that's just so powerful. I think, again, and just to honor this platform, you know, because you get to know that Dev gave the kids a grade or confirmed me not. Like, I'm just like, whoa, you know, okay. Tanasia.
Well, I think that speaking to like what Jonathan says, a lot of knowing when we're different comes out of trauma, right? So the thing that I will say, the moment I always know is different. I was a Pisces and a very Aries family and a very fire family. So I was a bunch of water coming out since birth. You can ask my mom, I would talk to anybody. I would say how I felt about anything freely, right? That was just who I was. I didn't unlearn that until like college and middle school, right? But that was something I was. And I would say the thing that made me realize I was different is I'm from inner city Baltimore, right? And I used to hang out with my cousins and everything on the block. And they would call me white girl, right? We got a lot of work to do inside the Black community,
yes,
right? But they would call me white girl. So I was like, okay, so I'm white girl, I'm this. So I guess I don't fit in here, right? But then at school, I was too Black. I was too loud, too activist, too this, too that. So I didn't fit in there either. And that was the moment when I realized, and also I was gay, and they were like, I don't know what to do with that either, right? And so that was the moment when I realized, if I don't fit here and I don't fit here, I must be different. I must be something new, right? That I need to create space for. I must create space for those women who are like me, because I knew I wasn't alone. It was really weird because I knew I wasn't alone. I just knew that there wasn't anybody else like me in my circles, right? But that's when I knew that I was different. When I was like, okay, so these people are telling me I don't fit in here, but these people are telling me I don't fit in here either. So where do I fit? I will find where I fit. I will create where I fit.
Yeah.
So that was like the first times for me, I would say.
Beautiful. Oh my, yeah, my heart is moving. This is the last question, unfortunately, and we are going to take it. And it is about moving us to, again, deeper celebration. So anonymous person asked, you know, since today is a day of celebration, and Dev, you brought up the idea of envisioning the future, could we all speak, or maybe you all, could you all speak to what the beautiful, utopic, Afrofuturistic dream looks like for you? All right.
My beautiful Afrofuturistic dream looks like something right now that is Black, queer, trans woman led. That's what I want. I want that for my dream. Anyway, y'all can continue talking.
Okay.
I mean, if I was to think of my Afrofuturistic dream, it would be a world where a Black child gets to have unabashed choice to fail, to recover, and then to dream again. And I think that those are steps that a Black child, a child of color, sometimes can't do. They can't know the language of failure. Then they can't know the language. If they know the language of failure, they can't know the language of success or abundance. That they have to live with a kind of a weight that no one else no other cultural race sometimes has to deal with. So, in my Afrofuturistic future, and I upride yours, is adding on to that is this notion of a Black child being able to grow up to know failure, to know success, and then to know abundance all at the same time, and not being challenged or being denounced or being admonished for that.
I would say that, and I retweet both of those answers. I would say that I envision a world where Black people have not no longer developed spiritual and mental chains in response to the physical chains, because the physical chains no longer exist. I find that there's so much of us that is a response to having to internalize this system that tries to kill us. And that's poison. So I want to see that poison exercised.
So y'all know I got to give me a piece, right? Moderator's privilege to kind of jump in. And I think what comes up for me, you know, my life, the foundation of my life is a Black feminist perspective, right? From grandmother to mother to all my community mothers back home, my sisters, my nieces, you all. So Black femme perspective always has been my guide since I've been here. So I think about Nina Simone, you know, you want to talk about possessed, right? Want to talk about more spirit than anything else in that body of matter. And I remember Nina Simone being asked the question, what does freedom mean to you or look like to you? And again, it jumped on her. You saw, baby, Nina, it jumped on her, those spirits. And she said, I tell you what freedom is to me. No fear, no fear. And just thinking about that moment, if there is fear, it's like fear of like, you know, winning again, you know, fear of like, am I including everybody? You're like, you know, what is the kind of positive aspects of fear? Because I think fear pushes, like you said, it pushes us to know ourselves, it pushes us a little bit further. So if there is some kind of positive attribute to that moment of like being afraid of unknowing that pushes us somewhere, that's what freedom looks like to me. And the other one, you know, we have to end with Queen Mother Toni Morrison, right? And she's like Queen. I mean, it's Juneteenth. Some of these folks are new ancestors, so we want them to know we see you two up there in the ram, right? In the spiritual, in the celestial, right? And so Toni Morrison says the function of racism is distraction.
Yeah.
It keeps you from doing your work. And I'm living in a life and a time where I don't know what my work is. I've gotten good at functioning well through this system called racism and creating product and culture through a system of racism. So an Afrofuturistic future for me is that like people get to do their work, right? They get to do what they are born to do in this life. And I can't even imagine that right now. And even though I keep trying it, but I hope that other generations are like, this is my work, because we've done what we needed to do. Whew. An hour goes fast when you're having fun. Like, we're gonna have to do this like 2.0, right? You know,
Popping again.
I mean, Globe, we in this COVID moment, like, we still Black 365, still gonna be queer in July and August, you know, at least through my birthday in September, because I got an outfit that I gotta wear. So let's just think about this moment again and how to go deeper. So I want to thank each and every one of you. Jonathan and I have, we're in DC, because again, you know, against it all, we've answered the call from the Movement for Black Lives to kind of respond and come to DC and celebrate Juneteenth if we can. And we're going to only in DC, right? You know, so what I've been saying is that I've been enjoying myself participating in the uprising on the 1 and 3 in Boston. I just need to get a little bit of it on the 2 and 4. So I had to come to DC, and we're about to go to the new Black Lives Matter Plaza for a Go Black Lives Matter march. Like, where they do that at? In DC.
Let's get it.
You're in my hometown right now, both you and Jonathan. So shout out to y'all. Give
What
some
did you
love
say?
to my peoples. I said, you in my hometown right now. So shout out to them.
It's my hometown.
I'm
No,
gonna try to
Jonathan,
get you
I told
some
you we
crabs.
connected on a different level. Anyway, Harold, go ahead.
I'm gonna try to get you some Tenacia, because we've been through this before. I'm gonna see if we can go through Baltimore and get some crabs. I'm not making any promises, but for you, because I love you, I will.
Yes.
So a closing
Don't
word, a
forget.
closing thought, just to take us out of this moment again. And we'll end in breath. I'll ask Jonathan, who does this beautiful ritual, to ground us in breath and take us out of it, to do that in a second. But closing thoughts, closing words. Let's start with you, Deb.
Look, it's now. I find I am constantly reminded of, and for me, you know, this was very formative, like 2012 to 2016. And like being from Florida, that's the beginning of my racial consciousness, like really, truly, because that's when Trayvon was taken from us. Mm-hmm. And that was in the same town that I was going to middle school. And I was like, okay, you know. And I think that there's a reason why I know I'm not the only Black person who's being reminded of those times. I think that's because this moment right here, we are meant to learn something from how it went last time that allowed us to somehow return to some form of stasis and not do that stuff no god dang more.
All right.
Period. That's what I'm gonna say.
It is now. The time is now.
Mm-hmm.
Asia.
It's the
Y'all can, okay, cool. Thank you, Dev, for bringing them in, because I think that right now, again, is very akin to, for me, the feeling that I went through when I was in college with Freddie Gray in Baltimore, right? I was not there, but I felt very similarly to how I feel now. What I'll say is my ending words is just, and this is not like, for co-conspirators, allies, you know this, but know it in a different way as we move forward. And for those of you, I'm going to take this platform that the Globe has so graciously given us, right? And say, believe Black people, believe Black queer people, believe Black women, right? Believe Black trans people, especially. Believe and listen to them. Because I don't know how many times during this process I have gotten back that like, oh yeah, but, and it's no buts. We feel, and we feel very, very, we know what we feel. We know it's real, right? We do extra work in figuring out how to accurately communicate ourselves to you all. So believe us when we say something. That's it.
Yes.
And then I'll close out and say that that as a person who just thinking about believing when we say something, I use this word, but I've been challenged by this word, but I've been a victim of a hate crime. And the thing, it was during COVID-19 that it happened and forced me to move. And the thing that actually I learned from it is that I have to save myself. That there is this notion of what does salvation look like for yourself? How can you bring that essence into being? And not have, and yes, you will have to construct a world where other people are invited in, but you get to invite them in. Not they have to be like, you know what I mean? You get to make the choice. So I just want to really lean into in this moment when there's so much quandary, so much uncertainty, so much possibility, that we can save ourselves. And if we save ourselves, we can then start saving maybe our neighbor. Then we can start saving our block. Maybe we can start saving our neighborhood, our culture. But first, we have to save ourselves. The oxygen mask has to come on us first. So in what ways are we going to do that?
Beautiful, beautiful. Can you close us on the unifying breath?
Alrighty, so this is what we do at National Black Theater. Harold likes it, so I'm gonna do it. So if everyone put their, wherever you are digitally, and everyone can hear the sound of my voice, if you can put your 2 feet flat on the ground, connecting yourself to Mother Earth, however way you can possibly do it, connecting yourself to Mother Earth, allowing that energy from Mother Earth to travel up through your legs, and now the energy from the crown, the royal, the abundant you, to travel through the crown of your head and land into the center of your system. We're just gonna take a breath together, and I'm gonna give you a little bit around my technology that I know about breath so far, so that we're all on the same page. Breath is a very important thing. Breath is the thing that allowed for this instrument, this vessel, this gift, this machine to operate. Breath was the thing that woke you up this morning. So with that, we're gonna take a unifying breath, knowing that the space and time which we're able to occupy with each other will never happen again. This sacred algorithm on this Zoom call will never happen again. So with that, we're gonna take a unifying breath. And we breathe in, I'm asking we breathe in possibility, love, radical imagination, healing, and Black liberation at the root and base of our system, and that wherever we are as satellites, as butterflies able to radio in a possible new beginning, a new tidal wave of possibilities to enter this planet, I'm asking that we inhale that in and we exhale it out as a gift, so that it wraps around everyone in this whole entire world, our community, our neighborhood, our building, our room, so that it is alchemized to become the source of our foundation. So the count of 3, inhale in, exhale out, and enjoy the rest of what is and should be Juneteenth, a day of liberation, a day of freedom, a day of Black sovereignty. And enjoy the rest of your week. And the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, inhale in, then exhale. Ashe.
Thank you all, Ashe.
Ashe.
Ashe. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, y'all.